podcast can aid in developing your leadership potential. We challenge you to take his tips and experiences and apply them to your personal business and personal growth. Enjoy this month's selection of Maximize Your Leadership.
Relationships, the first step to success. In my book, The 17 Indisputable Laws of Teamwork, one of the laws is the law of relationships that says working together increases the odds of winning together. That's what we want to talk about today. How do you develop a relationship with people that will help you to be more effective? There's a guy by the name of Albert Bernstein who has written a couple of books. You don't have this, but I'm going to take a couple minutes and read this to you. In one of his books, he talked about 19 ways to make people hate you, okay? And he's talking about, obviously, the workplace. He said, if you want to make enemies in your workplace, follow these simple procedures. Number one, expect everyone to do everything exactly the way you would do it. And criticize them when they don't. That'll make people hate you, don't you think? Or number two, expect people to give you what you want because you deserve it, not because you ask. Or number three, criticize a fellow worker to someone else in strictest confidence. Then he goes on and says, you might as well post your criticism on the bulletin board. Number four, he said, forget what you told your employees to do and then blame them when they don't do what you want. Or number five, have a heart-to-heart talk about your boss's shortcomings with his boss. That'll throw him, okay? Or number six, show up late and leave early. Or seven, do things your way rather than your boss's way because you think your way is better. Or number eight, tell employees that good service counts more than sales. Or nine, blame your errors and failures on bad instructions, poor equipment, and other people. Or 10, don't admit it when you make a mistake. Or 11, forget and pretend the other person never told you. 12, say, I hate this one, it's not my job description. 13, have temper tantrums and justify them by saying that you blow up, get it all out, and then it's over. And you feel good. Number 14, tell your boss he or she is unfair. 15, accuse anybody of discrimination without clearly knowing the legal definition of the term. Number 16, say it's not the money, it's the principle of the thing, and expect people to believe you. Or 17, make promises that you won't keep to keep people off of your back. Or number 18, complain to everyone, say you're being picked on. Or number 19, withhold information, hide the files, and avoid the proper work that you're going to do. Well, obviously, this guy's got a list, and we all have a list of things that we can do that are wrong. But in relationships, my friend Les Parrott wrote a book maybe 6 or 7 years ago called High Maintenance Relationships. I'm not sure it's still in print, but I'm going to tell you something. It's worth your money if you haven't read that book. And in this book, High Maintenance Relationships, he identifies types of people who are difficult to get along with. Now, before I go into these, how many of you know somebody that's difficult to get along with? Come on, raise your hand. Okay, yeah, it's 100% in here. Okay. How many of you are sitting beside that person that's difficult to get along with? This is a relationship lesson. You could be worse now than you were a moment ago, okay? So don't go there. Okay. So what he does, he identified types of people who are difficult to get along with, and I don't even have all of them. He had a longer list than this, but I'm just going to give you some of them, okay? Such as the critic. Constantly complains and gives unwanted advice. We all know one, don't we? In fact, as I give you these types of people, images will just flash in your mind. You'll see faces. Or how about this one, the martyr. Forever the victim. Racked with self-pity, Should have been born with a violin. You know what I mean? Huh? Or 3, the wet blanket. Pessimistic. Automatically negative. I mean, they just have the ability to rain on your parade. Isn't that right, huh? They can find a problem in every solution, can't they, huh? Or, how about the steamroller? Blindly insensitive to others. They're like the bull in the china shop. They just kind of run over you. They just killed you and then wonder why you're laying down. Or the gossip, spreads rumors, and leaks secrets. How about the control freak? Unable to let go and let be, just constantly has to bring it back and talk it and bring it up. The backstabber. This is the person that's just two-faced. Says one thing to you in front, says something entirely different in the back. Or how about the cold shoulder? This is the person that disengages and avoids contact with you. Anytime there is some kind of an issue that needs to be dealt with, they just pull away. Or the green-eyed monster. This is a person that just seethes with envy. They're just filled with it and always find themselves in that position. Or next, the volcano. The volcano builds steam and is ready to erupt. The sponge. This is the person that's constantly in need but never gives anything back. You know people like that? They just suck life from you. You know what I mean? You haven't even talked to them yet. You just see them coming and energy gets drained from you. You know what I mean? You kind of almost have to lay down and take a nap and you haven't even talked to them yet. And how about maybe the competitor? This is the person that keeps track of everything. I mean, in other words, you did this, I did this, you know, the whole process. Almost every description, you know somebody that fits that role, huh? Okay. Now, because I have to deal a lot with conflict resolution in relationships, I ask myself many times, why do people have conflict? I mean, why do we have conflict? And there are many reasons, but I want to give you just a few. Number one is human nature. I believe it's just who we are. H.B. London, a good friend of mine, said Cain had a problem with God, but he took it out on his brother. That's very, very true. Just the human nature. Abraham Lincoln was walking down the street one day with his two sons, and both of them were crying, and somebody came up and said, "What's the problem?" Abraham Lincoln said, "I have 3 walnuts, and both want 2. And that's the whole problem of the whole world. There's just a human nature, okay? Secondly is hurting people. One of the reasons that there is a lot of conflict is there are a lot of hurting people. Here's what I found, and I've got it in your notes. Hurting people hurt people. Whenever I see conflict and people just causing each other grief, the first question I ask is not what the issue is. First question I ask is, where are they hurting? Because hurting people hurt people. Now let me tell you something else. Not only do hurting people hurt people, and I have this in your notes, hurting people are hurt by people. Have you ever found somebody that you just said something slight and boy, they just went off and you think, man, what happened? Well, the best way I can explain it is I have a good buddy, Kevin Myers, who said one time, it's like having a splinter in your finger. When you have a splinter in your finger, sometimes even if you touch the bottom of the finger, even the hand, it hurts. Because there's already infection, there's already hurt, there's already sore. And when people are hurting on the inside, if you just touch them, it's way out of proportion. You say, well, I didn't even realize I did it. Well, of course you didn't. But because their inside is so hurting that they just respond in a very negative way. So people have conflict because it's the human nature of people, the fact that there are many people that are hurting. Another reason for conflict is what I call political people. Political people are manipulative. They have another agenda. And they are very much moving people for their agenda and for their cause and for what their purpose is. And a lot of times conflict comes out of there. Now, what I have in this next section for you is just a wonderful, wonderful test to see if you are in high maintenance relationships with people. And again, this isn't mine. This was my friend Les Parrott in this book, High Maintenance Relationships. I'm going to walk you through it. We'll take 5 minutes and do this. Just circle a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you feel especially anxious when a particular person has called and left a message for you to return the call? Yes or no? Here's another question. Have you recently been dealing with a relationship that drains you of enthusiasm and energy? Yes or no? Do you sometimes dread having to see or talk to a particular person at work or in a social situation? Yes or no? Do you have a relationship in which you give more than you get in return? Yes or no? Do you find yourself second-guessing your own performance as a result of an interaction with this person? Yes or no? Do you become more self-critical in the presence of this person? Yes or no? Is your creativity blocked, or is your clarity of mind hampered somewhat by the lingering discomfort of having to deal with this difficult person? Yes or no? Do you try to calm yourself after being with this person? I love this. By eating more, biting your nails, or engaging in some other unhealthy habit. You're with them, boy, you just crash when they're gone. Okay, free at last, free at last. Let's go to the refrigerator, okay? Do you ever have an imaginary conversation with this person, or mental arguments in which you defend yourself or try to explain your side of the conflict? Yes or no? Or I could stop there and say, if that have to be imaginary conversation, do you ever get your spouse and have that conversation with him? When I first got married, if Margaret was having a conflict with somebody, she wanted to talk it out. It's stupid me. I didn't know better. I thought she wanted answers. She didn't want answers. She just wanted ears. You know what I'm saying? So I'd sit there and say, well, here, you do these next 6 things. And she hated that. She said, don't give me answers. Just let me vent. Do you have people when you're with them, you just have to go vent? You have to kick something? You know what I'm saying? Okay, you got the picture. Have you become more susceptible to cold stomach problems or muscle tension since having to deal with this difficult person, yes or no? In other words, you have to get a massage after you talk to them. Do you feel resentful that this person seems to treat other people better than she or he treats you? Yes or no? Do you find yourself wondering why this person singles you out for criticism but rarely acknowledges things that you do well? Every parent who has teenagers would have to put a yes on that, don't you think? And after, don't teenagers go through a time when you can do nothing right? Next question. Have you thought about quitting your job as a result of having to interact with this difficult person? Yes or no? Have you noticed that you are more irritable or impatient with people you care about because of leftover frustrations from your interaction with this difficult person? In fact, I found that to be very true. Isn't it true sometimes we have to deal with these very difficult people, and then we come home to the people we truly love and take it out on them? And I've often said how true it is to the people we love the most, we take out our frustrations on when it's really somebody over there. We've heard the story, Zig Ziglar, just kick the cat, you know what I mean? When you go home, just kick the cat. Okay. Last question. Are you feeling discouraged that this person has continued to drain you of energy despite your efforts to improve your relationships? They're trying to make it better, but just keep getting drained, yes or no? A little scoring key down here says, total up the number of whys that you circle. And if you circle 10 or more whys, you are certainly in a high-maintenance relationship with this individual, okay? Just some good stuff. By the way, I believe every one of us has this type of relationship with somebody. It's almost always a fact, and relationships just are sometimes very difficult. Judith Vorst has written a lot of great children's books, like Alexander the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Good Day. Wrote a book that was entitled I'll Fix Anthony. This is a great relationship book. In this book, what happens is the younger brother complains about the way that his older brother Anthony treats him. In other words, he's not been treated good by his older brother Anthony. And so the title of the book is I'll Fix Anthony. And I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to just read you a little bit of this book. He said, my brother Anthony can read books now, but he won't read any books to me. He plays checkers with Bruce from his school. But when I want to play, he says, go away or I'll clobber you. I let him wear my Snoopy sweatshirt, but he never lets me borrow his sword. Mother says deep down in his heart Anthony loves me. Anthony says deep down in his heart he thinks I stink. Mother says deep down in his heart, where he doesn't even know it, Anthony loves me. Anthony says deep down in his heart he still thinks I stink. When I'm 6, I'll fix Anthony. Anthony will have the German measles, and my father will take me to a baseball game. Then Anthony will have the mumps, and my mother will take me to the flower show. Then Anthony will have a virus, and my grandfather will take me to the movies. When I'm 6, we'll have a skipping contest, and I'll skip faster than Anthony. Then we'll have a jumping contest, and I'll jump higher. Then we'll do eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and Anthony will be O-U-T. And he'll be very M-A-D. When I'm 6, I'll float, but Anthony will sink to the bottom. I'll dive off the board, but Anthony will change his mind. I'll breathe in and out when I should, but Anthony will only go glug, glug, glug. When I'm 6, I'll be able to tell left and right, but Anthony will be all mixed up. I'll be able to tell time, but Anthony will be all mixed up. I'll be able to tell my street and my city and sometimes my zip code, but Anthony will be all mixed up. And if he ever gets lost, I guess I'll have to go and find him. When I'm 6, my teeth will fall out, and I'll put them under a bed, and the tooth fairy will take them away and leave dimes. Anthony's teeth won't fall out. He'll wiggle and wiggle and wiggle them, and they won't fall out. I might sell him one of my teeth, but I might not. Anthony is chasing me out of the playroom. He says I stink. He says he's going to clobber me. I have to run now. But I won't have to run when I'm 6, because when I'm 6, I'll fix Anthony. Isn't that great? Every one of us have had somebody, isn't it true, that we just wanted to fix? You know, someday, somewhere, someplace, I'm going to be able to get back at them. Many times I do a lecture that is very helpful to people on how to be a real success. And I take the word real, R-E-A-L, and I break it down into 4 areas. And I'm only giving it to you not to do the lecture at all, but to show you the importance of relationships, because the letter R in the word real stands for relationships. If you and I are going to be successful, we have to be able to get along with people. In fact, when I did the 21 Laws of Leadership conferences last year, one of the things I shared with them in this area is people won't go along with you if they can't get along with you. You just have to be able to connect relationally with them. The letter E in the word real is equipping and training. If you want to be successful, you have to be able to train people. You have to be able to equip people. You have to be able to have people help you in whatever your cause is. And many hands, of course, make the load light. The letter A stands for attitude. You have to have attitude, tenacity. You have to have the right kind of attitude. And the letter L stands for leadership. You have to be able to lead. I only give you that just in this lecture long enough to say that one of the 4 components to success is relationships. And what I really believe is, it's the first step to success. I believe it's the first component. In fact, here's what I know. If a person doesn't relationally get along with people, I don't need to spend time on the other 3 areas with them, because they're never going to connect, and they're never going to be able to lead people if they can't connect and relate to them. Now, there are 4 levels of relationships. Number 1 is what I call surface relationships. We all have these, by the way. In fact, hopefully we have all 4 levels. Let me give you some characteristics of surface relationships. One is the most common of all relationships. It's the one we have the most with people. It's not only the most common of all relationships, it's the foundation of all relationships. It's how relationships start. That's why it's the first one I want to talk about. There is no strong commitment from either person. I don't have a strong commitment to you, and you don't have a strong commitment to me. So there's no strong commitment from either person. And finally, there can be a passive approach to this relationship. In other words, you don't initiate anything. You don't have to go out of your way for this. A classic example of a surface relationship is like if you go to the same store and you go up to the checkout place, her name's Sally, and hi Sally, how you doing? I'm fine, John, how you doing? And they're checking out and have a good day, and you got your groceries and you're on your way. So it's a service relationship. Okay. The second level of relationship is what I call structured relationships. And let me explain that. When a relationship is ready to go to another level, it's usually because it's been structured to do so. 3 characteristics about the structured relationships. These relationships take place at a specific time each week. Basically what I'm saying is, structured relationships, periodically there are times when you enter into these. They are built on routine encounters. The very fact that they're structured means you keep coming back to see this person or to be with this person. And usually, structured relationships happen around a common interest or activity. Let me explain. When you're a parent, if you have a boy, maybe it was taking your kid to ball games. And you sat in the bleachers with other parents. In other words, the common interest was your kid was playing ball, but while you were at it, you were sitting beside people and getting to know them. And the game brought you back together. The relationship didn't bring you back together. The structure brought you back together. In fact, it was interesting. When Margaret and I moved to Atlanta, because we lived in San Diego when our children grew up, one of the first things that Margaret and I both missed was the fact that we were not in a routine or structure to develop relationships with people, because all of a sudden our children were growing, so we didn't need to go do that, and there was not something that would cause us to come back and see people often enough to really to start developing a relationship. So that's level number 2, structured relationships. The third level is what I call secure relationships. And the best way to explain that is when a structured relationship becomes healthy and enjoyable, the relationship then moves to a new level, and this becomes a secure relationship. And there are 5 characteristics there. Number 1, the people desire to spend more time together. The main difference between this relationship and the structure in number 2 brings you together. The baseball game brought you together, not the relationship. Now, in this one, the people desire to spend more time together. Now, you're coming together for relationship purposes, not because your kids played on the same ball team. 2, mutual sharing takes place. Begins to be 2-sided. Next, thirdly, trust begins to form. There's a certain element of trust that begins to take place in this. It's in a secure relationship that friendship can be tested. There's also a testing of the friendship. And what I mean by that is not in the wrong way, but when a person will begin to do things that are out of the ordinary for you. In biblical terms, go the second mile, turn the other cheek. When all of a sudden you see them doing things beyond what would be natural, now you're beginning to test that friendship. And one more thing, and that is, there is a comfort level that is established at this level. You're very comfortable with this person. This is where personal friendships develop. You're comfortable enough because you're secure enough that you'll laugh at yourself, you'll tell the good, but you also tell the bad. Now, there's one more level of relationships. You start with the surface, and then you go to structured and secure. And the fourth area is what I call solid relationships. And this is the highest of all relationships. It's out of a solid relationship that a long-term relationship will develop. You have this kind of relationship, it's not just for a season. Another characteristic of a solid relationship is complete trust and confidentiality exists. You can really talk from your heart and it'll be kept in confidence, and you are free to talk because there's a trust level there. And finally, there's a desire to serve and give to others. At this relationship, you become as interested in giving to them as you do from getting from them. Let me read something to you, not in your notes. All relationships will be tested. In fact, the level of relationship usually moves through a period of transition when a test occurs. The interesting observation I have made personally and pastorally about relationships is that the level of the relationship will be determined by the way those involved respond to conflict. I really believe that. The level of the relationship will be determined by the way that those involved respond to the conflict. Let me explain. When a conflict is not dealt with properly, the relationship can regress to a previous level. When a conflict occurs and the response is in a right manner, then the relationship can progress to a higher level. So it's the response to conflict that usually determines if the relationship gets better or if it begins to disintegrate. Okay, now, enough of that. Because since relationships are the first step to success, let me give you 5 signs of a solid relationship. How do you know when the relationship is what it should be? This works in the family life. This works if you're on a team, in a company, organization. Okay, number 1, the first sign of a solid relationship is mutual enjoyment. In other words, both people can say, I like this relationship. It's not one-sided. And these are the people who enjoy being together simply because we enjoy being with them. This is a great phrase. What we do together is not as important as what we are together. Now that's a great understanding of the mutual enjoyment. And I understand this. My wife Margaret and I have this kind of relationship. And I'm sure most of you do. But what that really means is, when I have some time, if Margaret has to do errands, I just go run around the car and do errands with her. And just enjoy. It's not the errands, it's just the being together. That's the enjoyable part. That's what I'm talking about mutual enjoyment. The second sign of a solid relationship is respect. There's a respect involved in it. There's a great statement on respect in your notes. It is, you can't make another person feel important if you secretly feel that he or she is a nobody. And I put in 10 rules of respect, one way to build trust. Before I go to those 10 rules, this is not mine. This is from a pastor named Charles Christian. And let me just read to you an introduction, then we'll look at the 10 real quickly. He said, when I came to my church 5 years ago, many of my board members had grandchildren that were older than I was. He said, most of the rest had children that were my age. He said, at age 23, I was their pastor. This was very intimidating. So you get the picture. He's 23. He's got board members 65 on his board. He said, I was told by a mentor that I would have to have some rules on the road for communicating with my congregation. How would I get people so much older than I to talk to me rather than among themselves? And the list I drew up has evolved into 10 principles that has transformed the way that our church communicates. And they now are a covenant signed each year by the leaders on the board, including myself. And the 10 are very simple. Number 1, if you have a problem with me, come to me privately. If I have a problem with you, I'll come to you privately. If someone has a problem with me and comes to you, send them to me. I'll do the same for you. If someone consistently will not come to me, say, let's go to the pastor together I'm sure that he will see us about this, and I'll do the same for you. Be careful how you interpret me. I'd rather do that. On matters that are unclear, do not feel pressure to interpret my feelings or thoughts. It's easy to misinterpret intentions. Number 6, I will be careful how I interpret you. 7, if it's confidential, don't tell. Number 8, I do not read unsigned letters or notes. Number 9, I do not manipulate. I will not be manipulated. Do not let others manipulate you. Number 10, when in doubt, just say it. The only dumb questions are those that don't get asked. I thought there was some pretty good insight there for a kid. And really being able to develop and build respect in a solid relationship. And I put one statement of mine in there that I was at a conference recently and I made this statement, and there was an audible sound when I made it. That is, respect is almost always gained on difficult ground. And I really do believe that. It's when we as leaders make the tough decisions and people know we made a tough decision. One that was, quote, not natural, that respect is given to us. Respect is never handed to us. It is given slowly to us, but is almost always gained on difficult ground. The third sign of a solid relationship is shared experiences. It is possible to love a human being if you don't know them too long. We've all been there before. I think I love them. I've only known them for a week. That's it. I can handle that. Within a month, you start reconsidering. Chuck Swindoll says that in the Marines, he was taught that you should dig a hole big enough for two when preparing for combat. There's nothing quite like fighting a battle all alone. There's something strengthening about having a buddy with you that keeps you from panic. We all need someone to lean on. We all need another person to show support to us. Because we're dealing with solid relationships. I had a wonderful experience a couple of weeks ago. Went out to Aspen for a few days, took the kids and our 2 little grandchildren just to go out and let them ski, and Margaret and I watched the grandchildren, had a wonderful time. But we went out to a wonderful friend of mine, Tom and Joanne Philippi, who've been friends of ours since 1976, so quite a long time. And what makes our friendship so wonderful and rich is the fact that we've just shared many experiences. We've been around the world probably 3 or 4 times together. He's just been a wonderful friend. He's older than I am. I think he's 71 now. He's been a mentor. He's just given me great wisdom. I remember when we first met, this would have been about 76, 77. I was still very young. And he was just low middle age or whatever. And because he's been very successful, he said, John, he said, one of the things I want you to understand is that as you become more successful, one of the difficult things you'll have to do is to figure out if you can really trust the people around you. And I can remember so well, I thought, man, that's kind of a suspicious, cynical spirit to wonder if you can trust the people around you. Well, what I didn't realize is that the more that you're, quote, blessed, whether it's in financial areas or whatever areas, people come with different agendas to you. And you never really are sure what's their agenda. Well, he's given me great advice and great counsel. We took a walk that day in Aspen, and probably for 3 or 4 miles. And we just shared memories. When it was done, we both got back in the car, and we just sat in the car, didn't even turn the car on, probably for not a long time, a minute or 2. And we both just looked at each other, and there were tears coming down his face. And we realized we just had some good, intimate moments as a friend in a relationship. When he had his 70th birthday up in Indianapolis, I flew up to be with him. And there were about 200 other friends that were up there that night. We had a party for him, a surprise party. And they asked me to share. And so I had written on a card what his friendship meant to me. And I had gone to the Proverbs, and I talked about what the proverb writer said about friendship. The Bible teaches that friends are scarce in Proverbs 18:24. That friends will sacrifice for you in John 15:13. The friends will be intimate in John 15:15. And friends will not jump ship when the going gets rough in Proverbs 17:17. The friends will be available for counsel in Proverbs 27:9. And friends will speak the truth to you in Proverbs 27:6. The friends will support you in Job 6:14. And friends will sharpen you in Proverbs 27:17. And friends will be sensitive to your feelings in Proverbs 26:18 and 19. And friends will stick with you, Proverbs 16:28. And I just talked about this friendship, and I talked about how that Tom had loved me unconditionally, and that he had lifted the lid of my life, and I talked about the fact that you have to have lid lifters in your life, and Tom had been one of those. And I talked about the ways that he had done it, and how that he had been in my inner circle, and how he had kept my ministry going, and really what you know is the Enjoy group today. When it was very, very young and very fragile, I went to San Diego to pastor. And Tom said, well, you started this wonderful national ministry. And I said, well, you take care of it for me. I'm going to go pastor for a while. And he nurtured it for about 3 or 4 years and kept building it and calling me and saying, come over and speak. And it kept it alive until one day he just handed it back to me. He said, John, you're ready to let it go and take it to a whole new level. And I did. And now it's what we have today. Anyway, here's what I'm saying. Every one of us in this room and all of the listeners hopefully have this kind of relationship with somebody. Now, you don't need this kind of relationship with a lot of people. In fact, I have come to the conclusion that all anybody can handle on this level are about a half a dozen friends. It gets much more than that, and it gets difficult. You can have a lot of friends, but I mean on this level, probably about a half a dozen is about all that I can give the time to and handle in my own life. But every one of us know what it's like to have a person that we share experiences with and that we just absolutely look back and enjoy greatly. In your notes, Lee Iacocca one time asked legendary football coach Vince Lombardi what it took to make a winning team. This is in his book, Iacocca. He said, there are a lot of coaches with good ball clubs who know the fundamentals and have plenty of discipline, but they still don't win the games. Then you come to the third ingredient. If you're going to play together as a team, you've got to care for one another. Each player has to be thinking about the next guy and saying to himself, if I don't block that man, Paul is going to get his legs broken. I have to do my job well in order that he can do his. He said the difference between mediocrity and greatness, Lombardi said that night, is the feeling that these guys have for each other. After the Baltimore Ravens won the Super Bowl, Bill Belichick, I saw him in an interview, they asked him, do you think you can repeat a Super Bowl champion? And it surprised me, his answer said it'll be very difficult, which we know is very difficult. That didn't surprise me. He said because with free agency and the way the teams are today, 25 to 30% of the team that was here for this Super Bowl will not be here next year. And he said it's hard to build a repeat champion team when you have to keep rebuilding and have to keep building relationships. He said these guys have been long enough together to really care for each other. Well, that's part of this solid relationship level. So solid relationships are based on mutual enjoyment, respect, shared experiences. The fourth area that I think that solid relationships are built on is on reciprocity. Let me spell that. RECIPROCITY. And let me just talk to you about reciprocity for just a moment. For alliances to work, each ally must do a great deal for the other party, repeatedly, consistently over a long period of time. Reciprocity requires that the relationship is not one-sided. I would encourage you on a project, and that is write on a piece of paper on the left-hand column what I give, and on the right-hand column what I get. And look at a relationship that you have, and write all the things that you receive from the relationship and all the things that you give from the relationship, and look at yourself and ask yourself, are they equal? In your notes I have, considering all that you give to your relationship versus all that you're getting from it, who is getting the better deal? And then you choose from one of these three options. I'm getting a better deal, the other person's getting a better deal, we're getting an equally good deal. Now, if I'm getting a better deal, then what you do is you want to change the relationship. In other words, if the person is giving you more than you're getting, then you have to change yourself in this relationship. You've got to start giving more. If the other person is getting the better deal, then close the relationship. But if we're getting an equally good deal, continue the relationship. Because there are four kinds of people in your life. Those who add, subtract, divide, or multiply. And every relationship will affect you for good or for bad. Those who will not increase you inevitably will decrease you. Okay. And each weakness, I love this statement, each relationship nurtures a strength or weakness within you. So the reciprocity rule of human behavior is this. Over time, people come to share reciprocally similar attitudes toward each other. That's exactly what happens. We come to common ground. Great story. An old man is dying. His wife is beside him. They're talking about their life together, and he says, there you are, Agnes, at my side again as I'm dying. Yes, dear, his wife said. He said, looking back, he said, I remember all the times that you were at my side. You were there when I got my draft notice and had to go off to fight in the war. Yes, dear, I was there. He said, you were with me when our first house burned to the ground. Oh, yes, dear, I was there. When I had that accident that destroyed our car, you were there. Yes, honey, I was right beside you. You were at my side when the business went bankrupt and I lost everything I had. Yes, dear, I was there. The old man sighed and said, I tell you, Agnes, he says, you've been a real jinx. You've been a real jinx. That's not a relationship that we want to build on. Number 5, one more thing on solid ground, is trust. When you have a relationship built and based on solid ground, there's a tremendous amount of trust. And in your notes, stay with me now. Warren Bennett claims that trust is one of the 6 basic ingredients of leadership. Integrity is the basis of trust, which is not so much an ingredient of leadership as it is a product. It is the one quality that cannot be acquired but must be earned. It's given by co-workers and followers, and without it, the leader cannot function. Trust is the foundation upon which relationships in every setting are built. G. Bennett said, since we tend to see ourselves primarily in the light of our intentions, which are invisible to others, while we see others mainly in the light of their actions, which are all that's visible to us, we have a situation in which misunderstanding and injustice are the order of the day. One more quote. Michael Winston Motorola has rightly said, effective leaders ensure that people feel strong and capable. In every major survey on practices of effective leaders, trust in the leader is essential if other people are going to follow that person over time. People must experience the leader as believable, credible, and trustworthy. One of the ways trust is developed, whether in the leader or in any other person, is through consistency in behavior. Trust is also established when words and actions match. So, in closing this lesson, teams that get along usually get ahead. So here's the question. What would happen if your team members had mutual enjoyment of one another, respect for one another, shared experiences with one another, reciprocity to one another, and trust in one another? Well, I can tell you what would happen. You'd build a solid team, because relationships are the glue that holds the team together.